Reconnect. Erin, you're on the spot since you're standing at the podium. There we go. Yeah, up there.
In the Knolls, our neighborhood paid for a path to be made from Mount Adams Street to access the green area where the town of Owen. And talk to me, and I've had the problem as well. We have problems because where our HOA ended the sidewalk is at the end of our HOA's property line. And then it's nothing but red clay, slippery, gravelly. And so we used to take my special needs son on that trail, but we decided not to do that anymore after he had his ankle come out from there's a he's been avoiding that area. Is that working, walking home, or they're bicycling to and from school? It's a real concern because they've had a lot of problems. And I know I'm probably not going to say this right. I think it's safe. Is it safe pathways to school? Safe routes to school. And I just wanted to, especially when they routes to school, sorry. And I wonder if there's something how but also there's a lot of, I say a lot, there's more than 6 special needs that live and they're not able to access that area. And so I just come before the town, you know that there's a problem and I don't know what the answer is, but I thought if I come here, maybe one of you or somebody else that's listening can reach out and tell me what I, because I'd really like that change so it's safer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll have to tell me when my time
Yeah.
starts, because I don't know.
Go ahead and start now.
Thank you. Phyllis, downtown Wellington, and I have 3 points to make, all of them about library books in our public library. First of all, the moral cost. Someone asked me to take a look at some of the books in the library, so I did. Not having a lot of time, I decided to focus on the adult fiction, and it's called fictional young adult. And the young adult section, I didn't know quite for sure what age group that was, but it is 12 to 18-year bracket. Therefore, they're really legally minors, not adults. And if I were to read some out loud with these passages that are in some of these books, the mute button would be pushed, and I'm sure we break some law somewhere. Anyhow, I have made a few copies of the passages, which I'll give to you trustees when I'm done. I feel embarrassed to hand them out, but I will do it anyway and give each of you a copy. Instead of providing books which will corrupt the minds of our children, Why not put in books, things that teach young
Phyllis,
people how
Phyllis,
to be better?
Phyllis, can you speak into the microphone? People can't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Instead of having books that teach children bad things and corrupt their values, we need to teach the young people about how to set goals for their lives, especially as teenagers. For example, books that would motivate young people to find cures for diseases, invent things that would change our lives, the world a better to live. Secondly, economic. Parents hard to purchase groceries and their bills being out of. They don't want their hard-earned money used to buy immoral books, which are not the kind of they want their kids to read. And also the spiritual cost. God holds us responsible as parents, grandparents, trustees, librarians, teachers, and adults in these kids' lives to teach them value. Responsible. Self-said, whoever shall offend one of these that a MILF was hung around was cast in Mark 9. Thank you.
We're up and running.
Christine Gator, downtown. I just want to say what I'm not against. I'm not against ideas that are different than I believe speech. I'm not against the library staff. I'm assuming best intentions that they didn't know what was inside these books. When you read the land use code, you can see what is defined under an adult entertainment business. The sexual content in these books fit the description of books in an adult bookstore. Minors are not allowed store, but they have access to these same adult rated books in the library. I've heard it said that parents have the choice whether or not to check out the book, but I say that there's no choice because parents don't know what's inside the book in order to make that decision. I say that the library is not being inclusive of my Christian ethic. I'm a Christian and there are Christians in this town. I have to agree with, but I do you respect us, include our views in your decision-making process, because we're part of this community. Our Christian beliefs make up our bias, our worldview, which affects all areas of our life, including town government. To say that we have to leave our religion at the door. Number one, at the very least, get rid of the young adult books on the shelf that fall into the adult book category so minors don't have access to them. And the library can be a safe place for families and kids. Then you can lock up the adult books that can be categorized as an adult entertainment so minors permission. Number, as library board, come up with a book that books have before they're put on the shelf so you know what is in the book. There's websites that categorize both content and I'm going to circle back to the phrase separation of church and state. In our Constitution, it was stated by Thomas Jefferson, did not want the church to, and he did not the government to run the church. There's a separation of institutions, governance, wholeheartedly. Institution, I'm a person who has First Amendment right to practice my religion.
Thank you.
Hello. All right, so I'm also here tonight to speak about this book issue.
Name and address.
Heather Zadina, 15721 North County Road 7. Yes. As an initial matter, I would like to take the time to explain that the First Amendment to the Constitution does guarantee the freedom to practice your religion and to have your beliefs. However, it does not guarantee that you are able to impose your beliefs upon anyone else.
Heather,
So,
please address the board.
same sentence. At this stage, I am aware that this request is merely a request for information. However, the intention is clear, as has been stated. The request is the first step in a process to ban books from a public library. But also, as I have told my daughter as she nears her teen years, what you put on the internet is out there forever. We have seen Ms. Gator's comments pertaining to her intention to ban these books and remove them from the library. She claims there are sexually explicit books in the Wellington Library also. Anyone want to help me get rid of these? PM me. The intent is crystal clear. The issue of banning books is directly before us tonight. The creation and dissemination of thoughts, feelings, knowledge, information, even if divisive or potentially unsavory, is integral to the human condition. In fact, even writings deemed sexually explicit are integral to the human condition. Point of fact, humans are sexual creatures. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. And it has been the case for millennia that humans write, draw, discuss, ponder, explore, and joke about such matters. Sexually explicit hieroglyphics have been found on ancient Egyptian tomb walls, Grecian and Roman art and pottery, and even as I saw this past week on vacation, inscribed in stone on castle walls. This is the human condition. Moreover, what is deemed offensive or objectionable to one is subjective. Although I have my doubts that Ms. Gator or her supporters have personally read all of the books that are proposed on her list, I noticed that sexually explicit is not the only designation that they have of the many proposed books. Like Ms. Gator stated earlier, books that reference rape, sexual assault, that may be repugnant. These things happen to people, by people, whether we like it or not, and turning a blind eye to these issues. I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear that. Where am I? Occur within the depth and scope of humanity. These things happen to people, by people, whether we like it or not, and turning a blind eye to issues we wish didn't exist or didn't happen do not prevent them. And for that matter, by refusing to cover issues of rape, sexual assault, and other such things, we are essentially telling victims and people who have suffered such traumatic events that their voices are not to be heard.
Thank you.
Let me finish. This is an important subject of constitutional import, and furthermore, I've been
Everybody
interrupted
is given the same
multiple
amount of time.
times.
Take my 3 minutes. Y'all hunter the nose, go ahead. Have you got mine? I'll
Thank
sit
you.
back down.
Okay, I'll allow it.
All right, thank you. Talking, writing, and reading about the human experience, even the more depraved and unsavory aspects, provide the opportunity for broader discussion, debate, and understanding. However, just as it is my right to determine what to check out or read from my public library, it is Ms. Gator's right to not read or check out books from the library. Nobody is being forced here. I do not want individuals bent on censorship to determine what is appropriate for me as an adult or my child. And just as I am equally certain she and her ilk would not want me making decisions about her children. In short, would I prohibit my daughter from reading any of the books on Ms. Gator's list? Absolutely not. As a parent, I prefer to be as open with my child as possible and would prefer to read the more concerning passages and pages with her and discuss her questions, her feelings, her views, and how it impacts our thinking. I prefer not to encircle her in a facade of suppression. The ability to speak freely, to write and disseminate those writings to the public at large is the very cornerstone of our country's founding. So essential to our freedoms is the right to free speech and the freedom of the press that it was expressly enshrined in the First Amendment to our federal Constitution, ensuring that, quote, Congress make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, which clause has also been expressly integrated into the state side
Testing, nope. Do you turn it on and off? Testing. Can I sing a song? No. Everybody like runs screaming. We ready? No. Yeah. I don't either. Well, when I'm alone, yeah.
We're ready.
All right, we will begin the meeting again, time being 6:56. One other item after speaking, if we could hold down on the applause. Love the enthusiasm, but it doesn't come across well online and it doesn't help us get things done. Go ahead.
My name is Sherry Rodriguez, 8438 Second Street. I'm a little afraid to give my address because I've seen some personal attacks here tonight and I don't want my house TP'd or anything. But I am here asking that you guys, please protect our children. I have 7 kids and I want to protect them. The Bible does say, whatever things are good, whatever things are wholesome, whatever things are of good report, true and just, think on these things. Let's think of our society and picture thinking on wholesome, true, good, moral things, and then thinking about the opposite and the impurity and, what happens to a society and what happens to our children. It's very important that we protect what goes into our minds. It's very important. I'm not talking about banning anything. I think Christine Gator's suggestion for, taking out of the young adult section, the graphic scenes, those books. I think that's great. I think we should do that. Adults, go ahead and read what you want, I guess. And you can also buy these books anywhere you want to. But this is our public library. And we have a list of books in the library that goes against the land use code, categorizes these as adult entertainment. These books belong in those kind of establishments where children aren't allowed. The code states any business where individuals appear in a state in such a manner as to intentionally display specified anatomical areas or which encourages specified sexual activities. Specified sexual activities means like sexual stimulation, arousal, human masturbation, sexual intercourse, oral copulation. It goes on and on, the list does. Our tax money is paying for these books. And these minors have access to them. Books such as these normalize graphic sex scenes, rape, pornography, child molestation, and incest. I don't want that normalized in my society. I'm sorry. Desensitizing our youth and society to such filth. I am a taxpayer and I don't want my money going to such things. So let's protect our children. And please think, here's one of the scenes in one of the books that are for 12 to 18-year-olds. It says he wanted to FUCK her tenderly. The tightness of her vagina was more than he could bear. Removing himself from her was so painful to him, he cut it short and snatched his genitals out of the dry harbor of her vagina. She appeared to have fainted. This man is raping a child. This is in our teen section, okay? I don't want my kids getting a hold of that. There's an approval of incest in Lolita. It says Sicilians' sexual relations between a father and his daughter are acceptable as a matter of course. I am a great admirer of Sicilians. Do we want this normalized as
Thank you.
okay, so do we want to normalize this stuff? I'm just asking you guys, please protect our children and at least categorize and don't let children get a hold of this reading material. Thank you.
Tom Nischel, P.O. Box 1550. In 1965, Paul Harvey broadcasted "If I Were the Devil." It's really amazing to realize over 57 years ago how accurately he prophesied the future spiritual condition of the United States. Many of his statements were considered ridiculously outlandish at the time in history. Yet here's where we find ourselves today. "If I Were the Devil" by Paul Harvey. If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I would want to engulf the whole world in darkness. And I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, our Father which is in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that everything else would seem dull and uninteresting. Then I'd place it in children's libraries. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in turn was consumed. And with promises of higher rating, I'd have memorizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to emotions. Just let them run wild until before you knew it, you'd have a school, you'd have to have drug sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon, I could evict God from courthouses, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And it is in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and defy science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbols of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a tree. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what do you bet I could get whole states to promote gambling as a way to get rich? I would caution against extremes of hard work and patriotism, moral conduct. Thank you. Here's where we are.
Hello, my name is Clayton Graves. My address is 3255 Thundering Herd Way. And last speaker, it was very powerful. We were talking about religion and how the devil would take over the country. I respect religion, I do. I think that everybody has a right to practice whatever religion they choose. Your religion says that you cannot read a specific book or your children cannot read a specific book. I get that. Where I draw the line is when your religion tells me I can't read that book or my kids can't read that book. And the one thing that I do implore the council here is to research these books for yourself before you make a decision. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Riesfeld, live north of Wellington. I don't have a prepared statement for you today. I just want to talk a little bit about the role and the responsibility of libraries in the community and how access is one of the most critical things that that libraries bring to the world today. Access to information, free from having to pay for it, access to resources that can be helpful to people who are in bad situations, access to things that can be entertaining, helpful, can open your eyes to a lot of things in the world. And libraries need to be able to provide those books to all sorts of people, books and movies and all sorts of materials. It's not our responsibility to tell people what to read, to restrict their ability to gain access to that information. It's our responsibility to provide that information to whoever we can. And by putting a limit on books that we personally might find distasteful, whether it's me putting limits on those books or anyone else, we are then opening the door to limiting books that that anyone might find distasteful. We can't start as individuals telling public institutions what is and isn't morally correct, because we need everyone to be able to have access to the information they want. And so we can't restrict things based on our own personal biases, because that will lead us down a path that I don't think anyone wants to go down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dawn Peacock. So today is August 9th, and it is actually National Book Lovers Day. Honest to goodness, look it up. So I've come here tonight to discuss the idea of banning books in our town library. First off, I do believe that people do things because they believe it will help, and I do not do it with the intention to cause harm. I truly believe that people are inherently good, so I'm going to try my best to express myself in a respectful way to show that I understand that. I've read a lot of posts and have seen a list of books copied from a social media platform and want to present my thoughts. To be clear, I don't believe that any books meant for adults should ever be banned. That is simply trying to enforce a morality clause. And while you may be able to do that in employment contexts, it's not the place for a government to enforce on their citizens. Personally, I tend to lean towards the belief in these instances where the government has minimal intervention into the private lives of citizens, and this is not a minimal intervention in my eyes. Let me say that I do understand the concern when it comes to some of the content in the YA books as it relates to the younger age range of the target audience. The YA age range is pretty large, and I would suggest that we look at the middle grade fiction criteria, if we're not already using that, for the 8 to 12 age group, to help guide young ones to books that will help them become lifelong readers, which will help boost their vocabulary and social awareness. Some of the characteristics of middle grade fiction books include no profanity or graphic violence. The age of the protagonists are around 10 to 13 years old, and the books are typically 30 to 50,000 words in length. A good article on the difference between middle-aged fiction and young adult fiction can be found on masterclass.com website, where it details those classifications. When it comes to the YA category, I do believe that books that meet the publisher's YA guidelines should be available to the 13 and over age group. If a parent does not want their child reading a YA novel from the library, that is a discussion for their family to have. After all, they're there to raise their children. They're not there to make decisions for the thousands of other parents in this town. Again, minimal intervention into the private lives of citizens. I would like to suggest, though, that they're missing an important teaching opportunity. Great teaching moments come from contrast, not just by exposing your child to what you want your children to believe. If your child comes to you with a compelling reason to read the book, you can give a conditional approval that you both read the book and talk about it at the end of each chapter. That gives you the opportunity to parent your child through things that you may not otherwise have the opportunity to parent them through. Things that may happen when they're away at college or at a party or even at school can be addressed through these books. We're not with them when they're most vulnerable. These books can actually help parents give guidance for things that we haven't even thought of. And let's also remember that there are 24 registered sex offenders living in this town. It would be nice for our children to feel comfortable talking with us. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. And my name's John Walsby. I live at 7557 Weld County Road 100, Wellington, Colorado, about 19 years up there. Been in Colorado for 71 years. I love this state, but I've seen a lot of problems develop here recently. I hate religion. But I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I try to follow him to the best of my ability of the values that he sent forth. He loved children. There's a scripture that says anybody that harms a child, it would be better that they have a very heavy millstone tied around their neck and down they go. I agree with that. I have 2 sons. They're 43 and 41. Firefighters, they can take care of themselves, but I protected them until they were capable of making decisions. I tried to inject common sense into their thinking. I don't have any control over them now, but I do have 3 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. Anybody harm any of them, there would be HE double O to pay. And I would be probably a part of that. I have a friend that's a law enforcement officer. He's chief of police. He has direct knowledge that pornographic material leads to sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is a huge problem in Colorado and around the United States. So I would encourage you guys, common sense tells me what Ms. Rodriguez shared. I mean, that was offensive to me. I can't imagine having that available to whatever age group comes in here. So I would just encourage you, use common sense. Does common sense say what we should be letting, what Ms. Rodriguez just shared? I would say no. So I would encourage you again. I thank you. I appreciate your responsibility. I appreciate Wellington as a town. I do a lot of business here and I like it here, but I sure don't want to see problems develop because I, as an adult, can't have enough common sense to say, hey, that is not appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lene Warden. I live at 7780 Whitetail Circle in Wellington West. And I'm here to talk about books too. Big topic. So I'm a kid that changed schools all the time because my parents were in the military. And often it took a while before we got friends in each location. I went to 12 different schools before I started high school. And books gave me a way to explore the world in ways that were safe and educational. I could do it in my room. And if I had questions, I could talk to my parents. And you know what? My parents talked back to me. They actually guided me. They helped me understand things. They helped me put things in perspective. They did not tell me what I could read. And neither did the library, except once in a school in Germany when I couldn't take out any more horse books. So, but what I'm concerned about is that some people seem to be asking libraries, and I would say by extension schools, to take over parenting responsibilities. And I don't think that that's appropriate. I think it's for parents to guide their kids. Let's talk about tax money, shall we? You know, churches aren't taxed. And you know why? Because they're not supposed to be political. And I'm really concerned that some churches and some religion people, some people who are really involved in their religions are trying to make religions a political thing more than they should be and more than was intended by our founding fathers. I encourage people to read Letters to the Earth by Mark Twain and to read Fahrenheit 451 about book burning by Ray Bradbury. Those books informed me of so many new ideas and it helped me learn how to think. Libraries serve the community, but they have to serve the people in the community, the whole community, even people we might disagree with. If you read an objectionable book and it didn't become normalized to you, what on earth makes you think it's going to become normalized to your child? You should, as a parent, you should be looking out for them, not making that the responsibility of government paid babysitters. And where does it stop? Because books hold ideas. I was really terribly concerned to see that Toni Morrison books was on the list. And Toni Morrison is one of the best writers the United States has ever produced. And just because an idea is provocative does not make it bad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready? Are you ready? Are you done writing?
Where does that go?
My name's Lisa Cholet. I live at 7424 Homestretch Drive. Actually, and I kind of talk to you about some of these things from a different aspect, concerns that I have. I would like to preface it with, I was raised Catholic. I've been saved since September of 1997, and I take that very seriously. I have 5 children. 2 daughters have chosen to be teachers, which in my opinion is a selfless act because they will never have an easy life. One son is going to be graduating from boot camp in a couple weeks. He's dedicated himself to our military and to defending our country. One son is married, and I have a beautiful granddaughter. And one son's about to be a freshman in this high school. And I say that to you because my children love to read. And I don't think that the library, it's their responsibility to decide what they can and cannot read. I discuss books with my kids. I take them to get books. I buy them books because I'm their mom. And the track record of my children and what they've done with their lives thus far would speak to that. And books didn't make them good people or bad people. Their parenting and their environment gave them a good path to make their own choices. With that said, I'm concerned with the CORA report that came out. There's a lot of requests, some of which are for items that will eventually be posted for access to anyone anyway on our website. 43% are from one person. A lot of them are directed at staff emails on items of concern. And this particular item, the book item, isn't asking about how do I go about banning these or do we have these? It's questioning when we got them and when they were put into circulation. And given the number of staff members, amazing staff members that have left this town and left us in a really bad spot, frankly, because of the climate and the treatment that they get from citizens, frankly, from trustees. Ross, our librarian, is amazing. And I'm making an assumption, and I may be wrong, but I do not think I am based on experience with this, is that looking to see when they were put in circulation is another roundabout at a staff member. And Ross is an amazing person. He is, I think, being attacked for his sexual orientation, and that's against the law. And I need you guys to watch out for him.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brianna Hunter, the Knowles. We come from the generation and the generations before us that we were taught the old adage of that you do not discuss sex, politics, and religion. And as I stand here today, I'm in a room full of adults that do not know how to debate. We don't know how to exchange ideas, grow without taking the opposition's comments as personal slights, backhanded comments, or arguments. There's an underlying political current that's starting to be shown in this last month's CORA report and Board of Trustees packet, along with the citizens petitions that are glaring in our town. Two issues that I have heavy concern with is the citizens petition to move into in-person only voting and begin the removal protocol to remove books from our public library cited in the CORA report. This list of books was requested by a Board of Trustees spouse, is intending, and I will use the word intending due to her public statements online, to remove them from our public library. Please find me an example of banning books in history that tyranny did not follow, because in all my research, haven't found one. That same spouse, Christine Gaynor, consists of 42% of the CORA report this quarter. The Gators' views have always been shrouded in being heavily conservative and religious-based, which is not the majority of Wellington's idealism. I've said it before, I've posted it before. My statement is actually Miss Gator's current Facebook profile picture. My statement is, the Gators are heavily religious and I 10,000% support their freedom of religion, but I do not want their religion spilling over into our town politics. Moving forward in removal of books and petitioning to have in-person voting only is narrowing the town's accommodations and views to the droves of people that are moving here. I understand that citizens' petitions can either be voted on by the board or pushed to a public vote. If the board chooses to vote within itself, please, I am asking you, do not vote specifically with party or who you are being funded by, but vote on integrity and what's right with this town, what these people want moving forward. This left, right, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican tribalistic thought process that's diminished the critical thinking in this town's government ranks? Can we stop acting like two football teams running after pigskin and start acting like Americans fighting for freedom and liberty for all? These concerns are reverberated in the responses in the survey that you guys put out. I'm very concerned about the ultra-conservative board members actually causing more expenses and potentially unlawful activities in the effort to halt growth. In-depth backgrounds for trustees, including references. Keep watching them. You'll be surprised to learn the unethical, immoral, and sometimes illegal stuff at least one of your trustees has been up to. A big division in Republicans and Democrats, very rude to each other, no celebration of diversity or support for LGBTQ communities, and we have reputations of being racists. Potential harm. Thank you very much. This is from your town too.
Lowry Moyer, 3814 Harrison Avenue. I'm deeply concerned with the recent petitions filed by residents in our town, and the attempts at unconstitutional censorship and voter suppression are the most concerning. Book banning, the clear intention of several members of our town, is usually fueled by racism, hate for the LGBTQ community, and anti-feminism. Most of these authors on this list are minorities. When seeking to control what literature is available at a public library, you must ask why. These books provide valuable resources for those facing adversity and dealing with trauma. They offer valuable mental health resources for our children and adults. Colorado has led the way for the entire nation, improving the security of voting by mail. An attempt to change how our municipality votes and restrict this by in-person only is a clear and blatant attempt at voter suppression. To do away with water conservation and restriction efforts is asinine. Water is a life-sustaining and necessary, very limited resource. Our lawns may turn brown and it may be inconvenient to some, but it is our responsibility to conserve what we have so that our children and their children stand a chance at survival. Marijuana passed, yes, by one vote, but the people did vote and it passed, period. Nonprofits are essential to bringing much needed resources to our town. Banning support for these organizations by our town will drastically decrease the quality of life for our residents. I second what I heard earlier. Is this really how we want to be known? Thank you.
Johnny Genova, Wellington West. Literature teaches us what it means to be human. Even sometimes, as in the case of Nabokov's Lolita, how not to be. Eliminating books does not change the fact that kids are going to find worse things on TikTok on a Thursday. I hear concerns that taxpayers are paying for inappropriate content. This is a slippery slope. It would be easy to eliminate all the books if we find they hold inappropriate content, which I'm sure if certain folks tried hard enough, they could do. As a mother, I see my child reading any book as a welcome opportunity to engage in important discussion about not only the book, but how it might translate to her own life and the life of others around her. Books really do save us. Jesus does not belong in this. I recognize that's offensive to some people. But the separation of church and state is what the founding fathers intended. And when you impose your beliefs on others, you are infringing on their rights. And that's precisely what's happening here. When I first moved to Wellington nearly 20 years ago, I was struck by the town's tight-knit feel, a small town that felt like home, and I wanted to stay. But this is not the town that I recognize anymore. Now I see a place that wants to restrict knowledge and stifle dissent, a place that seeks to impose certain beliefs on others, couching it in morality and patriotism. This is not the Wellington I know, and it is dangerous. We cannot begin meddling with personal freedoms, whether it's at the books or the ballot boxes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cass Corman. I signed up over there from Buffalo Creek.
I came here tonight originally to talk about some of the citizen petitions, but in the last 48 hours, Wellington heated up a little bit on some subjects. So I'm going to be a little bit briefer on what I had planned on talking about. I do have some concerns on the petitions. I'll hit quickly. The donations, I wonder what the concern is about who's donating what. There's all sorts of groups out there that could be donating and helping this town, from conservative to liberal. I don't know why we would say no to that kind of help. Water conservation, as a kid who's grown up in the rural areas all of my life, water is everything. And we're in the middle, not even the middle, I don't know, a 20-year drought has been going on. I've watched the snowpacks dry up. I've watched those forests up there dry up and burn up. And if we can't drink it or use it for irrigation or for farming and ranching, we're in a lot of trouble. No one is going to thank us in 30 years for watering the lawn. So please do not pass anything that's going to stop conservation. We need to be doing more. Paper voting, I still don't understand this one. We have one of the most dismal turnouts for local elections of any place I've ever lived. Not one of the most dismal. When I say dismal, I mean like 12%. It's always been awful since I moved here in 2004, and it's never gotten really any better. Why would we keep anybody from voting? Unless there's some proof that this is not a good thing, and I've not seen anything that has shown that, we've got to get more people voting. We're not showing, most people are not coming to vote for these elections. Right now, we're not having the same turnout that we get for the big state and for the big federal ones. And that's sad for democracy right now. That was what I was going to spend the most of the time on. But moving on to the book ban issues. I know that every book in that library could be offensive to somebody. That's just a sad fact of life. I've been a preschool teacher and a regular teacher, and there's going to be something that upsets everyone. How many of those books in the adult section have sex, murder, or theft in them? Just about all of them. I know that at least be half of that library used to be murder mysteries. Okay, how many murders has that caused? I don't think it's been an uptick on any of that. I personally hate them, but that's what some people really like. I would also like to note for the record that the book that was on the list, The Lawn Boy, was misidentified. It was identified as being by Gary Paulson. That particular one is a comic book for 8 to 12-year-olds, not the same book as Jonathan Epperson, which I believe is the book that they meant to ban. If you missed that one, what else are you guys missing? That's really important to know. Thank you.
Hey, Kent Allen, 6863 McClellan over on the east side. Hey, E. coli. Going to change the subject up a bit here. Retention pond south of the businesses on the west side. The ponds are a big, huge cesspool of E. coli. Signs have gone up around the pond saying stay out. They don't tell any of us why. They don't warn people if a dog gets in, he brings E. coli home. Come on, guys, we got to do better. How are we going to clean it up? We can't release it into our system to water the fields. It's supposed to drain in 72 hours. It's still full. There's a big problem. Let's fix it. That's pretty much it. Oh, and by the way, I love everybody doing their own civic duty, coming out and talk, but I would encourage you to put all of these ballot measures up to vote in the coming up election. Let everybody decide, just not the people that are here at the meeting complaining or supporting. Constitutional rights, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Chad Zadina. I'm living north of Wellington, about 8 miles, whatever. I'm just sort of here to ramble a little bit. I hear a lot of talk on Let's Talk Wellington, our lovely site of this town that represents us so well. I just love living in a small town, and so what does that mean? How should we behave? I personally grew up in Nebraska, in Ogallala, in Paxton, town of 5,500. People didn't behave like this. We had a Methodist, Catholic at a Lutheran church, and nobody came to these meetings to, hey, ban these books to protect my children. We protected our own children. You know, first of all, we parented the children and they knew right from wrong, and parents knew what their kids were doing. So it's not your job to decide what my kid reads, period. Second, behavior on the board and in general in our town, we need to realize a couple things. One, we're all human beings, first of all. And second of all, we're US citizens. So if you want to be patriotic, we're all US citizens, regardless if you're a liberal or a conservative, we're all the same. We all want the same things generally in life. Some just want to restrict things versus others. So I think we all need to just kind of take a step back and realize that we can all get along and don't have to divide, which seems like the way of the country right now. Going to parenting again, there's a lot of comments on protecting our children, but once again, protect your own children and decide what they want to do, because if you're a parent, you should know what your kids are reading, what they're watching. I assume most people here that were speaking, their kids have smartphones, and there's way more damaging things on smartphones than just reading a book. Other than that, that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cam Teets, East Wellington. A lot of you guys know me because you pick on me online. So, but anyways, I wanted to talk about the book Purge as well a little bit. We have a freedom of speech. We have a right to that in this country. We also have a right to determine what our children are exposed to. There's censorship on iTunes, censorship at the movie theater. It shouldn't be any different here. If I want my kid to read a rotten book, I'll let him. It's not your choice to choose that for them. What everybody's forgetting is there's a whole room right there full of books that the library's taken it upon themselves to purge. You know, we have a librarian here. You see it every time they purge the books here, once or twice a year, they do a book sale. Thumb through those a little bit and see what they're all about. I can tell you which way those books are leaning. Look here yourself, they're right there. So cat in a hat, let's bring that back too. So you guys are already doing what people are complaining about here, but they want to keep the perverted stuff. And that's great. There's a right to have those books here. Nothing wrong with that. I just don't want my kids exposed to it. So, and as far as the people on the left saying the rights agitators were generally pretty quiet. A few of us are going to start speaking up, I think. And I think you're going to find out in November how conservative this town really is.
Hi, Jesse Andreen from the Harvest Village neighborhood. A couple of random things as well. I actually wanted to thank Trustee Teets. There was an elderly woman that was having a really hard time, honestly, one of the saddest situations I've ever seen in my life. And she spent her own money to help this woman move, help her clean up her house and stuff. And so I just thank you for listening to her and going out of your way as a town representative to help her. I think that's really awesome. So also with the town cleanup that I have kind of started in this town, I wondered if the town of Wellington could maybe help a little more before going into the winter months, because we, when we go around different areas of town, the ditches tend to be really overgrown, and I don't know if it's possible to mow them or to even help us clean up some of those ditches. We just recently were cleaning up ditches down by Rice Elementary School, kind of along the disc golf course, and they were really, really trashy. So it's just hard to clean up a lot of those areas because they're so overgrown and you don't know what's living in there. And I personally get a little freaked out. So if that's possible before the winter, just so that our volunteers can get those taken care of, that would be great. And thank you, Town of Wellington, for moving the trash for us now. That's really helpful and taking care of that, disposing of it. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had no intention of sharing, but I just felt really compelled hearing everything tonight. So I am Lisa Christopherson. I have been a part of Wellington Communities since 2018, and I'm at 3922 Cleveland Avenue as a business owner. What most of you probably don't know about me is for 25 years, I've been fighting human trafficking, and I started in the streets of Houston, Texas. I raised 21 boys, street boys that came out of the streets of Houston. More than half of them were sons of prostituted women. I had the privilege and honor of being their only parent that had sense in their life for about 4 to 5 years each. Having had done that, moved up north, and my husband was a youth pastor for over 17 years, Timberline Church, Fort Collins, Colorado. Since then, he is a chaplain for Larimer County Sheriff and Purge Fire Authority and first responders. And I have been for 17 years fighting human trafficking here in Northern Colorado, in India, Nepal, Spain, Tajikistan, and as of 5 years ago here in Northern Colorado and back in Houston again. And I want to say that we have a severe problem in the world, in my personal opinion, in the small little tiny sliver that I have worked in with prostituted women and the children and how we're raising. I've been asked to speak on many occasions with mothers of preschoolers in other areas to ask, how can we help fight this problem? And it is a problem. And so I agree with so many things that have been talked about tonight, but the problem cannot be solved in our library. It needs to be solved in our parenting or in our uncles and aunts sharing with their nephews and in our grandchildren and in any type of influence that you have. I did not parent the way you would think a conservative Christian, which was what I was brought up as, would have, because I did sit down with them with all this material and talk to them because I knew they'd see it. It's worse now than ever. You can get it anywhere you turn. So if we as parents and as responsible citizens aren't sitting down and talking about this content, the library isn't going to control it. I promise you, this is way bigger than that. We need to teach our sons, our men to respect women. We need to teach our daughters, our girls to respect themselves. We may have a chance. The only way to do that is to spend time. We cannot be the moral compass for everyone. The library is not our moral compass, and I don't want them to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Rosemary. And I remember first meeting Ashley. She came to town because she wanted to raise her children in a small town environment. I've been looking at some of the comments and stuff in the Wellington brochure. And I see in here the low cost of living in a wholesome, family-friendly environment that is perfect balance for individuals of every age. Well, as parents, we are supposed to be the gatekeepers to our children because they come with a blank slate. And what they put into their minds is going to stay there. Ted Bundy killed and raped and sexually abused hundreds of women and then killed them. And the driving force behind that was pornography. These books in these libraries are not books, but they're instruction manuals. They do not, they recruit. They are recruiting, they're producing perverts. And so I want to ask everybody in this room, why did you move to Wellington? What attracted you to Wellington? Because I'm the 6th generation Coloradan. There's a big change in this whole society. And I'm so disgusted because people come here and they change it into what they left. If this is going to be family friendly, we have to be advocates for our children, not allowing them to grow up as perverts. And every single thing that is in these books is perversion. Do you want that? What we tolerate today is what is embraced tomorrow. It is not about religion. It's about having virtues and values. What are your baselines? what do you wake up every morning and what do you base your behavior on for that day? The coarsening of society is through books and all this filth that has been peddling for a long time. I grew up with 5 brothers and I never wanted to be a boy, but these books are confusing children. And just go look out in the pasture. Even animals know that there's only 2 genders. So thank you. And actually, art club is child abuse. And that happened right here in Wellington.
Good evening. I'm Christine Sujimoto. I live in the Meadows. I can't believe that we're even having this conversation in America, let alone my town. Our freedom of speech is protected in the First Amendment, which means tolerating, if not accepting, you don't have to accept ideas different from our own. The First Amendment prohibits the government and government entities, such as public libraries, from restricting the sharing of those ideas, including in the written form. Families are free to place limits within their own households, but not to impose those restrictions on the public. If I pick up a book at the library that I don't agree with, I have the agency to either continue reading or put it down. It's my parental duty to be aware of what my children are reading. I've redirected them to other books more than once, but sometimes they do read books I wouldn't have chosen for myself or by myself for them. The discussions that stem from these books are some of the most difficult, yet the best ones that we've ever had. Books are for everyone. It's imperative that we're all able to read books that we can relate to, and probably even more importantly, books that scare us and stretch us beyond our comfort zones, that force us to wrestle with new perspectives and ideas. Let's not forget one of the fundamental principles that, at least in America, it's not up to the government at any level to decide what its citizens can read.
Thank you. All righty. Thank you for the public comments. Thank you for practicing your civic duty. Appreciate it. All right, on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes of July 26, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting. May I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve. Give me a minute. I have to actually turn to it now. The consent agenda. For the, give me the date now. July 26th, 2022.
A second.
Make it a roll call.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Kinney,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes. All right, on to action item, resolution number 28-2022, resolution adopting the 2022-2024 strategic plan. We have Hallie Sheldon presenting.
I'm gonna sit over here if that is okay.
Yeah.
Just because I'm navigating the meeting as well. Give me 1 second while I pull up the PowerPoint. Alrighty, can we see that? Let's see if I can zoom that in. All right, so tonight is the third presentation on this draft strategic plan. So this will be the third draft that we're looking at. First draft in a regular meeting. The other two occurred during work sessions. And I just wanted to give a high level for those that are listening online tonight or those that are here tonight in person that were not a part of the previous meetings, just what strategic planning is. So the goal of this document is for the Board of Trustees to develop a vision for the town's next 2 years. And then staff takes those goals and priorities that are set in that document and they prioritize their initiatives, their goals, their projects. They develop their budgets based on that vision set by the Board of Trustees. This strategic plan document is the big picture structure of the vision, and then the goals are then outlined kind of on the back end with budget items and things like that. I did provide just some examples of our previous strategic plan, some of the goals that were laid out, and then the accomplishments that occurred in the 2 years that align with those visions, if you look at the packet materials for that. And I just wanted to go over just where we've been and how we got here. So through the strategic planning process, we started out with a community town hall. This was an opportunity for residents to kind of get to be the board for the night and talk about all the priorities they wanted to see accomplished in the town of Wellington in the next 2 years. There were sticky notes, questions where they were able to write up their goals and their visions and their concerns. And then they all sat down together into different tables and had to prioritize their priorities, which is the difficult part. So we heard from them, and you can see the document in the packet that came out from that, as well as all of the individual comments that were made through that night. And then we also had a digital feedback survey asking the same questions that occurred at the town hall for those that couldn't attend. And that was open between April and June. So we have those results in your packet as well. We followed up with that with the Board of Trustees workshop, where the board is able to look at that feedback from the community residents and then develop their own priorities as the Board of Trustees. Followed that with 2 work session items where we worked through some draft language, which is how we got here tonight. So tonight staff is looking for direction from the Board of Trustees on this 3rd draft, whether we feel like the 4 pillars identified are the visionary pillars the board would like to move forward with, if the goals meet the needs of the vision you're trying to create, if the language is appropriate to describe the ideas that you are hoping to accomplish, and if there's anything missing or any items you want to remove, anything like that. So I will leave it at that, so you guys can kind of discuss amongst yourselves about the 3rd draft.
Thank you. Okay, so we will start with Trustee Mason. Any questions or comments?
So we did get an amended packet. I believe that was Monday afternoon roughly. There's quite a few changes in there that were mentioned by Trustee Gator. I guess I would ask the board, are we trying to keep this more of a visionary document, or are we trying to put really specific targets in here? I think some of these are not attainable, such as infrastructure number 3, complete 15% of stormwater solutions identified in the master plan. That's going to be millions of dollars. We don't have that. Personally, I like the I suppose the 3rd draft that was provided. If we want to try to incorporate some of Trustees Gator's pieces into that, I think that's appropriate, but otherwise, I would like to see this be a little bit more visionary and a little bit less. It's like I said, 15% of stormwater is not going to happen.
Thank you. Trustee Kinney?
I definitely agree with what Trustee Mason mentioned. Putting specific goals and figures within a visionary document is likely not leading us in the correct direction. In my mind, the strategic plan essentially helps us prioritize projects. And we do have to relate to and rely on understanding exactly what has to happen in a community. Based on the advice, of course, from our citizens and the feedback there, as well as from our staff, that will indicate projects that are either currentently in process or approaching. And it also enables us to prioritize CIP projects. So say we have 5-year projects and they don't align with any of our strategic plans, that's budget associated with those projects that aren't important to us right now. Those are things that we could push off and impact the budget to put that money towards things that do relate to our strategic projects. So when I'm looking at strategic plan and its purpose and function, that's how I see it operating. Now, within those pillars, we have some certain objectives here. Will there be, goals associated with that we identify later? Absolutely. There'll be specific projects that we will hope and plan to finish within those 2 years based on those priorities. But without having that strategic plan in place right now, that's not the current direction, and we can't put a figure on it if we don't know how that's going to operate. And we haven't given clear direction to staff to do that, so there's no way we could come to certain figures. So that is something that I definitely agree with. It does need to remain visionary, create those priorities and functions that we're trying to accomplish. Something I am a little concerned about, and I think is missing, is that we are very focused within those 2 years of activities that will happen, projects that will happen within the next 2 years. I would think it'd be very unfortunate if this board wouldn't consider and plan for items beyond 2 years as responsible leaders of this community. Say, for example, all of our water treatment processes, our comprehensive plan, those projects took longer than 2 years. So if we're only looking at 2 years and only looking at projects that can be achieved within those 2 years, but aren't planning for the future, we're not doing our job. And we need to help this community grow strategically, carefully. And we need to put more of those planning functions for things that aren't necessarily achievable within 2 years, but things that we need to consider, research, poll our residents as to their priorities. We need to include more of those items in here. So I think that's really important. And am I missing it? Okay. Where did we end up putting the staffing and, organizational strength? It's
Goal
in
number
infrastructure.
5 on infrastructure.
I must be looking at the wrong one. Can you read it? to me?
The goal says prioritize organizational strength to retain, attract, and support town staff.
Wonderful. Okay. I was not seeing that in there, and I was like, oh, that's something I definitely wanted to make sure was in there. So that's fantastic. So that's my feedback so far, but I'd love to comment on other feedback that other people have too.
Trustee Gator?
Yep, so I did put together kind of some of my thoughts, and I'm not in disagreement with Trustee Mason that I don't know that everything on there is achievable. This was kind of what I was hoping we were going to do at our last meeting, but we chose not to, was not just have me throw, here's all my ideas, because then there's no feedback from anyone else at the table. There's literally just my ideas. And really my concerns aren't different in what I went through, is making sure that we're giving staff things that are specific. And I understand we're trying to set vision, we're looking at things, but at the same time, when we make it far too broad, I feel like we talk all the time about our staff is stretched for time. We don't have enough bodies, we have too much going on. And I don't disagree that we need to be planning for future, but we also need to be realistic about what can we handle now. And there's a lot of things on there that they sound great, they're awesome, especially from a political standpoint, but in reality, we need to focus on the larger things that are affecting our residents' everyday lives. And so what I tried to do with the amendment that I put together was just kind of to say, okay, here is my thoughts okay, here's something where we could be specific, but at the same time, we're giving staff latitude of saying, how do we get there? And the key to that is if we put together a goal, for example, one that they talked about on there was saying increase sales tax by 5%, and had great conversation with the town administrator is like, well, if you want this, Trustee Gator, you're going to have to give me more staff. And now these are the conversations that need to be had, is because I'm one who typically does not like hiring more staff. But if I'm coming to staff and saying, well, I want you to do this, that's the town administrator's job, is to say, well, if you really want me to achieve this goal, then you're going to have to provide more staffing, because with the resources we have now, it's not achievable. But when we have our goals so broad and open, we don't have the ability to do that. And we also don't have the ability to sit down and say, okay, have we gotten where we're trying to get? Are we there? Are we halfway there? Are we, do we overshoot our goal? And that's the concern I have, is that it's just too broad, and it covered too many areas. And so if we're going to go with the other ones, again, that's one person's thoughts on that. My ask is that we try to really trim some of the things down so we have our staff focused in on the key areas. It's not to say that we can't work on other things. There can be other things that can come through this. Many people have said on this board, it's a living document. Because this is what we put in it, doesn't mean we can't add something to it later. But when we start with, we have 18 items, I think, on there right now, that is a lot for our staff to try and keep on top of, and really to stay focused in. When you do too many different things, you don't do any of them well. And that's one of the challenges that we've had in the past, is that a lot of the things that we've been undoing the last 2 years were because work wasn't done well prior. And so my thought process is, if we can condense that down, yes, we'll have to get rid of some things that we might like and want to have on there, but that's reality, you know, and in my job, there's a lot of things I would love to be able to do. We just don't have the resources for it. And so I think we need to work within that as well.
Thank you. Trustee Teets.
So I just will recap some of the things in here. I truly liked Hallie's edits to the strategic plan, but did have notes that typically when you set goals, a goal is measurable. So whenever you look up the definition of a goal, it's something that is achievable and something that is measurable. So when I'm looking at the strategic plan that is currently proposed, there's nothing measurable. It's awesome, and it's goals in general and a guiding document. But everywhere I've looked, from Colorado to Kansas to California to Washington, I even looked at Florida. The one thing all of those plans have in common is their goals are measurable, and they are measured in a percentage. They're literally written just as this document is written. I love the increased sales tax generated by 5%. That's a goal. It's a target. It gives good guidance to town. Are we going to achieve it? Possibly not. But we have a goal that we're setting, and it's something to work towards. Reduce cost of living to residents by 5% from sources connected to the town. Rates, fees, permits. I don't know if you guys have pulled permits lately, but they're excessively expensive. I love that we have a goal. We have a way to achieve it. He even included a way to measure by survey and engage our residents in how they feel that we are increasing their access to local government by 60%. It's measurable. It's goal setting. The strategic plans that I've looked at in most areas look just as Trustee Gator has presented. I will say the mission statement and vision statement were a little different than what I had kind of viewed in so many states. But if that's our town's vision statement, it was just very blanket. A lot of the mission and vision statements that I had read went into great depth on working with residents, working with our town employees, including them and engaging everyone in active participation. That was all part of their mission and vision statement. So there is a vision, and it is a guiding document that can be altered and changed, but having that standard base to start of percentage, I think is wonderful. I had sent you guys all the Windsor strategic plan and didn't know if you guys had a chance to look at it. Their residents can click on anything and find out exactly what's going on in their town in the moment. Like, it intentionally, deliberately reports everything to them. That I had fun. I spent like an hour and a half clicking around on their webpage because I had fun reading what their goals and accomplishments were. If there was a red slice in their strategic plan, you could click on it and it would tell you why they had hit their hiccups. I want our residents to have access to information like that. I think a lot of that divide will be alleviated when people feel and see that that transparency is there. Oh, this sidewalk didn't get conquered from here to here in a subdivision. Here's the reason why. I thought that was awesome. So I've been exploring a lot of different areas, trying to see where we can improve. I think that we can do a lot of proactive items and engage with our staff and our community if we have set goals with measurable accomplishments. It's accountability too.
I have a comment based on.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I work in business intelligence. So that dashboard that Windsor has is incredibly impressive. And so I sell those products. That's what I do for major Fortune 200 companies. So they're very expensive. But I think it's fantastic. I mean, if people had that level of data and information to view, that would be amazing. So the way these things are built, and if this was something that we wanted to pursue, we would need to add a pillar essentially that increases our IT footprint. We would need probably, in a case of when I would develop this and I would do it, I would do at least 2 developers in a database management group. There would be serious security concerns as well. We might need somebody to manage compliance. So about 4 employees if we were launching this as an example and to build it. Also software like this, for example, the one that they have there, I provide those kind of things to businesses anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a month to support those services. And then in addition to that, users who utilize that, they may have a license fee as well. So for example, every resident that accesses that dashboard, there may be a fee associated with those people. There are a million different softwares, dashboard services to use. I use some of the most popular ones in my work right now. If this were something that we would want to pursue, and this amazing transparency that we do talk about a lot, we're talking about 4 people employed and a significant subscription monthly to support that function. That would be lovely. That would be lovely, lovely, lovely. And I'd be behind it 100% because I love that transparency. Is that priority in some of our other things? I don't know if that's the case. I think that would be brilliant and wonderful. I just want to put that into perspective from my professional experience because that's exactly what I do for work. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Well, first off, I apologize. I've been out of town and just got back in late last night. But in going through this, I kind of agree with a lot of the people here that, this is a vision statement. It's more of a generality. Gives us something in the state or the town to work with, to have some type of goals. I really think what our board needs to do is, okay, this is a good general, but again, work for things underneath this. If we want to have specific goals, have workshops here so we can break it down even further so we can give it. But I think this is a good generalization initially, and then we can go and dig deeper from that. And again, how we want to work with the board, with the town staff and all that. And, we do want to have measurable goals. We want to have, the town, know what we're trying to get through. We want to know what town thinks that they can get through and how to work best for the city at that point. And, it's got to be measurable. There's got to be some goals out there. We got to be goal driven as always. And, just no matter what type of business you got to have some goals out there. Love to see the IT. That's kind of after my generation here. I deal with this stuff all day long and it's such a pain, but I understand people love that stuff. And if you know how to work it and get it through, I mean, the knowledge that you can get from it is fantastic. But one thing we probably need to be looking at too is get through of our expensive projects right now before we start expending on some of the other ones too. So, we got to be cost effective here as much as we can be. And, we got a limited budget. One thing that I always complained about government was they thought the citizens had unlimited pocketbooks. And we definitely have to take that in mind. Whatever we do, we have to keep the people, whether it's water rates, whether it, anything else that we have around this town. We always got to put our people first on that. So.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
First, I'd like to thank the staff and the community and the trustees for the collective effort that we put into putting together this strategic plan. It's my 6th formal strategic planning process in local government. And I've never seen this level of participation in this process. So that's really great. And the important part about that is that since everybody has had an opportunity to participate in it, one of the elements of a successful strategic plan is the element of continuity. And that's something that we've talked about a lot that's really important to us in the community. And I want to break this down. We're talking about a strategic plan. We're not talking about strategic directions. And when we talk about the word strategic, I always think of chess. My son always talks, he wants to talk strategy, he wants to talk chess. And if we get too specific in how we want to try and achieve some of these goals, then we're not giving ourselves an opportunity to be strategic. When different things happen and pawns have to be moved, if we restrict the number of pawns on the board, we restrict our opportunities to be able to win the game. So I think that I am very proud of this strategic plan. I really like the third draft. I think this is a document that this board can be very proud of, and that there are elements that can carry on to the next strategic plan. Not all of them. I see different pieces from the previous one, but what's really great about this is there's elements from everybody in here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we workshopped it. We as a board, discussed items from the community, from each other, our own ideas. It's been drafted twice now. This is the third draft where we've discussed it and gone over it. I think it is important to keep it visionary, to allow us to tackle what we need to tackle. Town staff is educated and well-versed in how to get things done for the citizens, with our direction as well when needed. I'm a big supporter of it. And I think we all did a great job. I think, Hallie, thank you for getting these put together and everybody putting up with our multiple sessions on it. It's important and I'm glad we did it. So yeah, that's where I stand. Are there any public comments regarding this agenda item? Coming from outfield.
My apologies. Melissa Whitehouse, 3922 Grant Avenue. And I just had it in front of me and my apologies. I went and took a quick look at page 34, Trustee Gator's comments under communication, item number 2. And I see improve access to local government measured by survey of residents, subset improve language access, meaning communication. Trustees Teets and Wiegand also agreed with Gator on his comments. Could someone explain to me if this is what is pertained to with the Water Alliance grant? Wasn't that also for communications and language access? And all 3 of you voted no. If you could answer that one question for me, I'd appreciate that, because maybe I missed the bus on this. Thank you.
No more further comment. Okay. Can I get a motion and a second on this agenda item?
Make a motion to approve resolution number 28, 2022, a resolution adopting the 2022-2024 strategic plan as presented in the Board of Trustees packet on Friday, August 9th. Thank you so much. Was it Friday we got the packet?
Tuesday. Well, we
We got the packet on Friday.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. The original packet.
The original packet,
Sure.
not the amended.
That would have been Friday the 5th.
Friday the 5th.
Second.
Second, okay. Are there any final comments from the board on this agenda item? We will start with Trustee Wiegand.
No comment.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No comment.
I do just want to say before we get too far here, there on the plan, there are a number of things that on there that are absolutely measurable, right? Complete the wastewater plant and the water plant. That we're going to know in 2 years whether that's done or not. We sure will. A number of these things, it's the same type of thing. Complete the downtown master plan and parks master plan. These are measurable things that we'll either know that they're done or not. So I did just want to be clear on that.
Thank you. Trustee Kenny.
I do really appreciate this version because of all the notice for planning. I feel like that may have been lost with some of the feedback that we have to be planning for the future beyond our board. So it's so important that we move forward and master plans and we consider the future. So I really appreciate that. And of course, as I mentioned before, our organizational strength, our town cannot exist and function without people to run it. So I appreciate that that is one of our priorities.
Thank you. Trustee Gator?
If we are going to be moving forward with the third draft that was presented, there's two things that I would request is if we can try to maybe reduce our number, if we can maybe bring it down to 4 per item. So it would bring us down to 16 to make that a little bit cleaner and just to reduce some of that. The other thing is that if on infrastructure number 1, can we add complete the water treatment plant and water reclamation facility expansion projects under budget and on time? So not just get them done, but let's make it a priority to complete those on time and under budget. So if we're going to move forward with that third draft, those would be kind of my request is that we reduce some of that so that's not as many things. I'm open to discussion about which ones we could remove and then adjusting the water and treatment plants to specify our goals, not just get them done, but get them done on time and under budget.
Thank you. Trustee Teets?
If I could, I'd like to answer the question that was addressed to us with
Um,
the,
It's public comment, not public question, so I would rather not.
got it. Yeah, no, then I would say that it does look a little murky and we've got a column that has 5, one that has 3, one that has 5, one that has 4. I agree that if we can just get to a point where each column has a subset of numbers and it's not as broad, then I'm fine with it. But I don't know if that's open for discussion or if we're just voting.
Here, could I, sorry.
I personally like the under budget portion. Can we, it's amendable at this point, right? If we did under budget and on time, I think that would be very helpful. Thoughts?
My only comment on that is everything that we've approved up to this point has a maximum cost.
Right.
It's implied that when we're completing projects, that we would do them under budget and on time. And you know, we've already taken steps to do that. So I feel like it's redundant, but I mean, if that's what's needed, that's fine. But it is assumed that if we're completing a project and we're being financially responsible or fiscally responsible, so we show in the other thing with sound financial practices, that would be an obvious thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it may be redundant, but it also, I believe would share some transparency to those that maybe weren't at those meetings or items of that nature. Just to kind of stand there. That's my thoughts. Trustee Gator, what else did you have?
I just had one follow-up question because this might address some of my concerns about specific goals. I know when I talked with Town Administrator Garcia in our meeting on Monday, she mentioned typically there is more goal setting that would happen after this that would be a combination of the board and the staff. And while I would like to see this more, again, someone said it today, they want us as their elected representatives to work together. So that'd really be my goal. So if we as a board are willing to really engage with that goal setting process and not just say staff figure out the goals and then tell us, but us to actually be able to give input in that process. I feel like I could maybe work in some of the things that I would like to see to help be more specific into that goal setting process.
Yeah, in the future.
In the future, I know we're not doing it today,
Yeah.
but yes,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we as a board are committed to actually engaging in that process, not just putting that off on staff.
Oh, great. Any further comments?
I agree to engage, to work with town staff. I think it's really needed right now in general.
Perfect. So do we want, as a board, do we want to amend it and put at least on this draft here that we will complete the water treatment plant under budget and on time?
So
We all agree to that?
I'd like to move, Mayor, I'd like to move to amend the third draft of the strategic plan on infrastructure line 1 to read complete water treatment plant and water reclamation facility expansion projects on time and under budget.
I second.
Okay, may I get a roll call?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Kinney,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Now you need a vote on the underlying motion.
There we go.
Perfect. All right, let's get a vote on the underlying motion for the amended. Go for it.
You're voting on the amended motion that trustee Kinney made.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Gator,
May I get a roll call?
trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Kinney,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
It was trustee McDonald's original motion. Trustee Kinney was the second one.
Perfect. All right, now on to resolution number 29, 2022, a resolution for Board of Trustees appointing town clerk Patti Garcia to present.
First, I was going to send an email out and I forgot to about the Windsor reporting the performance dashboard. So you have employed the people that created that dashboard, at least the hard copy and the way we used to report and the way it's set up. And we had Kelly and I used to have to do that by hand. We'd have to go out and meet with each department, find out where they were at, what the status was. It was so much work. And it's turned out beautiful through the process they're using now in the software. So I've reached out to the town manager to find out what type of software they're using, how many staff, how they do that. So he's a good friend. I'll figure it out in case that's a direction we want to go, because Kelly and I have talked about how we used to do the reporting in Windsor and how great it was. And we'd put stuff in the packet and, it was our way of showing off of what we were accomplishing. And then the town was very much aware of the status of the project. So very excited to be able to maybe implement something like that here. So before you tonight, Mayor and trustees, is the appointment of a town clerk. Your code requires you to have a town clerk appointed. Crystal's last day was last Thursday. And so I just figured I was the best person at this point in time. I've been a town clerk. I have some support. Hallie is here to help. Charity Campfield, your current finance director, has worked as a town clerk before, so she's helping a lot with liquor licensing, but there needs to be a main point of contact. Adrian Wright, who sits at our front desk and is our municipal court clerk, will be stepping in as an interim deputy clerk. We're going to raise her up a little bit and have her start attending meetings, help with minutes and things like that. That's part of our employee retention, keeping people busy and learning more about local government and their roles and responsibilities. So this is just a request to appoint me as town clerk until we get someone else appointed. When we go through the interview process, we'll include 2 members of the Board of Trustees. I'll be reaching out to people to check availability and dates once that time comes, but that won't be for several weeks, probably a couple months.
Are there any comments, questions from the board on this? We'll start with trustee Kinney.
I think this is the appropriate move, so I'm in agreement.
Thank you. Trustee Gator?
It's good with me.
Perfect. Trustee Teets?
I'm fine with it.
Perfect. Trustee Wiegand?
Sounds great.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Do you want to? Sure. We are all, this is for the board and for the public. We are severely understaffed right now. We are all taking on extra duties and extra responsibilities and sharing those duties across the, wide variety of people. We are stepping into areas that some of us are not comfortable in, but
we have an incredible staff and they're rising to the challenge to do that. So if I want to do it, it's something I'm comfortable with. I'm the right person to do that right now. So we're all stretching ourselves really thin, but we're getting stuff done slowly but surely.
We love you, Patti. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, rock star, that's for sure. Putting your nose to the grindstone. I'm all about it. Are there any comments from the public regarding this agenda item? No, okay.
Patty?
Go for it.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. That will
Thank
never
you.
happen again.
Here.
All right.
There. Do we have a time frame what it's going to take to get a clerk in?
So it has been posted. We posted it last week. It'll be posted through the end of next week. We have not had a lot of applications. I believe we had 4, which is really minimal. So I'm going to start reaching out to some people that I know to see if there's anyone that's interested in making a switch and come work for Wellington and work for us. So we'll see how it rolls. And if we can't find anyone, then we will extend that or, potentially take a break for a couple of weeks and then bring it back once we have a good grouping of candidates. Then it generally takes, we usually set up interviews within 2 weeks, and then the interview process takes about a week, and then they usually give 2 weeks to 4 weeks notice. So I'm thinking we will be without a town clerk, without a parks manager. And who's the third one? Community and business liaison, potentially till the first of the year. We'll see.
May I get a motion and a second on this agenda item?
I move that we approve resolution number 29 to 2022, resolution of the Board of Trustees, clerk as.
Second.
Any final comments from the board?
Is there anything that we can do as trustees right now with you guys stretched as thin as you are to not like I canceled my appointment with you on Monday because I knew you were extremely busy. Is there anything we can be doing to assist?
No, not necessarily. If there's something that comes up that I'm feeling like we can't get to, or if it's going to be delayed, then I will just let you know that. If I think of anything, I'll certainly let you know. But right now we're kind of meeting in the mornings and kind of divide and conquering, what needs to get done through the day. We're more on a day-to-day process right now as opposed to week to month. We have Hallie will be going on maternity leave, which we're so excited for. And we have a couple key people going on some extended vacations. So it's going to be patience. We can get the work done. It just may not happen as quickly as you're used to. Our priority, of course, is always our citizens. So like the utility billing, answering those questions, making sure we're taking care of our streets and things like that. That's the priority right now. And we are all going out and checking things. We had a group go out and check some properties today, which don't normally go out and check properties, but they went out and checked anyway. So, it's just being patient. And if you guys hear things in the community that, that people are frustrated because there's a delay in something or they're not getting a response, let me know so we can make sure that hopefully it didn't fall through the cracks. We are all trying to track our emails and the phone calls that are coming through. So if you hear something, please let us know because then we can work on getting caught up.
All right. Hearing no further comments. May I get a roll call on the motion?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kinney,
Yes.
Trustee Mason,
Yes.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes. All right, resolution number 29, 2023, an ordinance concerning utility billing procedures. Patti Garcia to present.
Patti Garcia, Town Administrator. This is an ordinance that came before you 2 meetings ago about changing some of our utility billing procedures. Our new finance director had identified some areas that we were lacking as far as billing procedures. She was coming up with some ideas and ways to try to streamline processes. In this period of time, Ms. Campfield has been doing some research about, what are some best practices for the processes we currently have in place, and has attended some webinars with Cassell to find out to learn other ways of dealing with our landlord and our tenant accounts. So there needs to be more research. We also are currently hiring a utility billing clerk. So we really don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves with our hiring process and implementing new policy and not having a lot of good data yet. So this is my request of you all, is to allow us to postpone consideration of this ordinance until after the first of the year. Give staff an opportunity to truly do the research, make sure that our residents who need to qualify or would like to qualify for help and support through the county and through Catholic Charities, to find out how that works together and make sure we're not putting roadblocks for people to be able to access that help and support. So this is my request. If you have any questions, I'm happy to field them, but we feel, as from a staff perspective, this is the best direction to go at this time.
Trustee Teets.
I agree to delay the consideration.
Trustee Williams.
I think it's a very smart move. You definitely need to get, and I think you got the input from the landlords out there that are doing it, and we need to keep them right there at the very forefront of this. Thank you.
Trustee Gator.
No, I think it's a good idea. Would it be something we need to postpone it to a date certain, or just postpone it indefinitely and then we can just bring it back up again later? I don't know which is the best.
I'm hoping to
Process
postpone
way.
indefinitely. I'm looking at the
That
town
cause-
attorney. We could postpone it to the
I think
first.
you would postpone indefinitely, because what's going to be brought back in the future will have both a different ordinance number
Okay.
and it will have a different content. So I
Okay.
think, yes, postpone indefinitely ordinance 14/2022.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any comments from the public regarding this agenda item? No. Okay. Can I get a motion and a second on this agenda item?
I'd like to move that we postpone indefinitely ordinance number 14/2022 and ordinance concerning utility billing procedures.
I second.
Any final comments from the board? No. Okay. Hearing no further comments, may I get a roll call on this motion?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Kinney,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any reports from the town attorney?
Yes. Dan Sapienza, Mark Oliver Sapienza, town attorney. So in your packet, and I apologize about the format of this, there's a Board of Trustees meeting item listed, Board of Trustees Rules of Procedure. This is one of the issues that was caused by not having the town clerk here on Friday, because I submitted this a little bit late, and so it didn't format really nicely, so I do apologize.
We tried.
We tried, yes, and it was mostly my fault on how that got in there. But part of that delay was due to me hemming and hawing a little on what I wanted to include in the packet this evening, what I wanted to get in front of you, and whether it was quite ready to be put in the packet, whether I wanted to talk to you individually on this item first. But what's come up, I think, and I may be clear to everybody, but I've talked to a few of you about this over the last month or two, is the Board of Trustees is governed by rules of procedure that don't necessarily always work for this Board of Trustees. Over the years, the Wellington Town Board of Trustees has adopted into ordinance, into the law of the town of Wellington, that its rules or its meetings are governed by Robert's rules. It's adopted resolutions saying that its meetings are governed by Bob's rules as dictated by drafted by the Colorado Municipal League. It's adopted various policies and other resolutions saying this is how we're going to do meetings. It's a bit of a hodgepodge of various rules and procedures. And we, as this board was seated in April, we had a lot of discussions about how meetings would be conducted. And as staff, our goal wasn't just to throw everything out that had been done before. The past board operated, I'm not gonna say smoothly, it had its hiccups, but it operated under all those random hodgepodges of rules. But I'm not sure that that is working well right now. And I think part of that is it's a set of rules, whether policies passed by previous boards that you may or may not be aware of all of, and to be honest, we're not aware of all of those rules sometimes, whether it's resolutions or whether it's Robert's rules. And that's what's adopted into the law of Wellington, is that these meetings are governed by the latest version of Robert's rules. So I think right now we're on the 12th edition, and whenever the 13th edition comes out, that will then all of a sudden be the law of the town of Wellington. So these meetings are governed by outside processes, outside procedures that weren't written for this board, weren't written for this town. And while I don't want to use the board's time to rewrite all of the rules and to throw everything out, I think there is value in the town board kind of coming up with its own thing. And I've met with Trustee Gator a number of times on this, and I'm not to say, well, we've been working together, I think, on this, on an idea. And if you'd like to say a couple words about maybe where we're going with this or what you're thinking, that would be helpful.
No, absolutely. So I know I met with Dan about this the first time, and it was just, I know one of the concerns that I've heard from residents, we heard it here tonight, is just about how we as a board work together. And a lot of that does come from that conglomeration of all the different rules, right? Technically, we have 3 sets of rules. We have Robert's rules, Bob's rules, and then we also have other rules that haven't been officially adopted, but that we as a board discussed as operating agreements and things we would operate under. And so technically we have 3 different sets of things in it. Oftentimes they conflict. And so what I had discussed with Dan and what we had kind of come up with is part of the solution isn't just write a new set of rules and keep everything else, was go in, get rid of the ordinance saying we follow Robert's rules, get rid of the resolution saying we follow Bob's rules. And then basically, I know Dan sent us several months ago in our work session, we had the town of Netherland had this gigantic, crazy long document. And it said, we don't need something that long, but could we put something together that entails the things that we already discussed as a board, right? We already worked out, like absences, remote meetings, policies, things like that. We already talked about a lot of that stuff, but we never wrote it down in anything. Get some of that written down, and then also go through what are the 95% of things that we do, right? Most of it is a motion, a second, postpone, whatever, right? And say, okay, how do we as a board want to do that? And we can decide that. We as a board can say, hey, we really like what was in Robert's rules, let's do that. We can say, we hate what was in Robert's rules. This is how we think this should be handled. And then basically adopt our own set of rules that we follow. And then what we do then is have a backstop of, it could be Robert's rules or Bob's rules, I don't really care what it is, but what's clearly defined is that if the Robert's rules, let's say we go with that, ever conflicts with the rules we adopted, our rules take precedence. So there's never a question of, well, Robert's rules says this. Well, it doesn't matter because our rules say this and we follow our rules. And it would allow us, I think, to just make it very clear. And for me, a lot of it was, it shouldn't be having to like constantly throughout the meeting asking the town attorney, well, how should we handle this issue? If we can, because Robert's rules is crazy and there's all these different cases, and if it's this case or that case, but if we can just make simple rules, one, it's easier, so we're not having to ask the town attorney in the middle of meetings, how should we handle this issue? I think it's also helpful because it's easier for our residents if they want to understand how our board operates. They don't have to go read hundreds of pages of some obscure thing. They can literally just read through the few pages that we put together. So that's kind of the idea behind it, is figure out what works for Wellington and then put that into actually something that is our rules, and then follow that versus trying to follow other rules.
And the purpose of any rules is to facilitate this board's actions. What this board wants to do is what the rules are there to help. I feel like by having Robert's rules as the law of the town, it's in some ways inhibiting actually productive meetings. Another thing that we've talked about is by this board adopting its own rules. And then I think the next board, which would be after the April 2024 election, it becomes one of the first items that new board talks about. They have a few meetings under the belt, and then you bring this back and it can be readopted. It can be changed if there's a new mayor who wants them to do things different, if there's a new board who says, I've watched these meetings and this always bugged me. Can we talk about doing it different? And then each board can take ownership of those rules. It's your rules about how you run your meetings. That being said, I don't necessarily want to take all of the board's time rehashing everything. I don't want to have, I think we could do this by running through about 40 work sessions of about 4 hours each, and we can really hammer this out. Not sure that's good use of your time. I'm not sure it's use of my time. It's not a good use of the town's time. What I've put together, and this is what I was debating a little bit on what to put in the packet, is I'm trying to put together started out as a skeleton, and it's got a lot more meat on there than that these days. But kind of a rough framework of the areas that I think could be covered in this operating agreement or this town rules of procedure. I've tried to include the items that I felt like this board in particular has already discussed. You know, this board had work sessions where you talked about the times of meetings. You had work sessions about how agendas are prepared. You've talked about a lot. You've talked about all of this quite a bit. It just hasn't necessarily been written down into resolution or policy or anything like that. So I put together this skeleton, added back on those things that I thought were covered. And I'd like to clean this up a little more and then send it out to the members of the board. And this document, I'm happy to share it with absolutely anybody. So this is not in any way confidential for members of the public that are here. Let me know. I'm happy to share this document. I just didn't want to put it in the packet yet today. And then if you would read through it, if you think about it, if you have ideas, if you say this, absolutely we need in there, let me know. I'm not looking for language. You don't need to draft the formal language that's going to be in this policy. That's what I can do. But give me a big picture. You know, this is how you want the meeting run. These are the motions you want. Any feedback, whether you do red lines on the version I sent, if you make your own list, but take a look at the document, provide that back to me and to Patti, and we'll work together to streamline getting this information together. And so we'll do this. We'll do this that way, I think, at least for this to start. There certainly will have to be a work session. There will have to be other discussion of the document as a whole, but initially I want to get out this rough framework. And if you're willing to do that, I think it'd be a good way to kind of craft this document. And I want to get it out, get this done as quickly as possible. I don't want this entire board's tenure to be discussing rules of procedure. And I'm sure you don't either. That's probably not why you got elected. But I'm happy to discuss it at any point. Call me, email me questions, email me feedback, and then we can put something together and try to get something that feels more like what this board wants. Rather than this hodgepodge of what's been adopted in the past, kind of modified each year. So any questions on that? Does that sound like a okay idea to anybody? Anybody just want to stick with what we have? I'm happy to take feedback now or at any point in the future.
I think it's a great idea. I'd hate for it to be something that we pass back and forth. That sounds incredibly expensive, to be completely honest, if this takes a long time, especially with your expertise and work on it. So I think it's great. That would be a great way for us to all operate in the same way and have the same expectations and procedure. I think that's fantastic. I don't want this to be something that we spend a significant amount of money on in order to do. I think we need to be responsible with that and then make sure that it's clear and concise.
Yeah, and I agree with Trustee Keenan. I know one suggestion that Ms. Garcia had made was that we can email our ideas and thoughts to her because she gets paid. And so she can basically combine those into a document. And then basically the idea was we can get kind of the thoughts from different people and then potentially bring that into a work session. So it worked really well with the finance committee. They had a Google Doc that we can't do a Google Doc because of sunshine laws. That's how they did their stuff. Everyone went in and said, hey, I like this, change this. And it would be in essence with that, except instead of a Google Doc, we're sending it to Ms. Garcia, and then she would put that all together then for like a work session that we could, but that would help keep the cost down.
I'm very aware of that. And I don't want to spend a lot of the town's money on rules and procedures. I think though, long-term, it will really help streamline how this board operates and the use of everybody's time.
I think it's a great idea. I think it'll help alleviate confusion on going and digging 3 different places to figure out how we're supposed to operate.
Keep it simple. That's what I like about it. And it makes the meetings go a lot quicker that way.
I was waiting for the right time to make a couple of statements, and I think that this is the perfect time to do that. Based on the community feedback and input that we received earlier. A lot of feedback recently from the community regarding board member conduct and how we're treating staff and the community members. We cannot continue. This community cannot afford to be governed through tyranny of majority. And activism by proxy taken by a few trustees is divisive, ineffective, and destructive. And if this document will set some guidelines to help us operate in a more effective, less divisive, and not so destructive to the community, then I support that. But I think that what's really important for these types of documents is that there are consequences when the rules are not followed. And in the past, it's been unclear what the consequences look like when we decide to deviate from the rules that we set for ourselves. So I support this project if it will help solve our tyranny by majority and our activism by proxy and help this board be more collaborative.
Thank you.
No, honestly, I think I mentioned this last time we talked about this. I don't think I've got really any issue with the current rules. I know obviously we have the issue with the motion to reconsideration and that, but you know, if this is direction we want to go and we want to get this done, let's get it done. So.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. John, thanks for having that idea. Yeah, it'll help us clean things up, make the meetings flow better, help us understand the rules better and know how we're going to function as a team up here. And so I'm all for it.
All right. It's thanks, and we'll be in touch.
Perfect. Okay. Ms. Garcia, do you have anything to report? Town administrator, town clerk, town everything.
That's all good. So in your packet is the Board of Trustees planning calendar. You'll see at the next meeting, there's a work session with the CAC and we'll do a 4th of July debrief. Looking ahead, September 13th, there's a work session. It's a regular meeting night, but the only item on the agenda is to present the 2023 draft budget. So that'll be very short and then we'll roll into a work session where all departments other than Public Works will be presenting their budgets. We'll go through line item by line item, whatever you all need. But we'll go through those kind of administrative type budgets for that night. And then the next one will be September 20th. We'll go through the Public Works budget that night and hopefully then we will have all of your questions answered. So thank you.
Thank you. Larimer County Sheriff's Monthly Report.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. You've all got a copy of our June report in your packet. I'm just going to go over a couple of highlighted items in there. As you can see, our dispatch or our call for service for the month of June were slightly down, but our officer initiated activity went up slightly in there, just to our contacts and some of our calls in the month of June was the summertime of dealing with juvenile noise complaints and that kind of activity in the middle of the night. A lot of our focus and the hot topic lately and everything is the new high school, middle school, and the traffic patterns. As you can scroll down through your report, you'll see our traffic was up substantially in the month of June to try to educate the public, to try to get out there and to make those contacts, make those impacts with the people traveling through the community. Realistically, our citations are up by 8 compared to last year. But as far as our warnings, up 58 from last year, because a lot of that is based on the education. Contacting the people that are coming through here during those high priority times when we expect students, parents to be coming and going from the schools. As you saw, we had our traffic trailer out there on Highway 1 at certain times and periods to try to collect some of that data of when those problem areas are going to be. and trying to make an impact out there, focusing on some of that traffic so we can start that early. So hopefully next week, we're not having those issues and problems, or those are very minimal. And we can spend that time continuing that education with the parents that are coming up to this area that aren't familiar with. So a lot of that focus was that, and planning with CDOT and State Patrol of kind of what that's going to look like the first couple weeks of school, but really trying to have that impact early so they see us out there making a presence. And hopefully we're getting the traffic slowed down for when our precious children are starting to come and go from there several times a day. We've also been in the schools a lot, taking the educators and the staff there through the schools, talking about problem areas, talking about what to do in certain situations. I spent most of the afternoon up there yesterday, just kind of walking through and talking about some of those issues, talking about what to think on and what to start focusing on in those schools. So we can have the best start of the school year in this brand new building, and hopefully everything is going to go well. So that was been our priority for the month of June. The month of June also was planning for the great 4th of July up here, trying to get all the resources from our reserves, our cadet program, and getting all the staff. So we were out here, we were visible. As you saw, there was some horrific events across the nation in these festivities, but our presence out there and the citizens, I can't say enough thank you for coming up and thanking us and bringing us cold water when it was so hot out there and taking care of us. So thank everybody. But that was a lot of our focus in June, is just to make sure that that went as smooth as possible and we didn't have a tragedy up here. So, other than that, the report's in there. I'll stand for any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? We'll start with Trustee Gator.
No, I think I appreciate the work you guys are doing ahead of time on the school. It is really great that you guys are out there. I know we've got some limitations that we can and can't do, and I appreciate you guys working through that. It's good to hear that you're going through the school with the staff, walking them through some of the issues and concerns. And I do appreciate the increased presence at 4th of July. I know that was a major concern that was brought up. I'm really glad to hear you guys did a lot with that, and glad that you guys were able to help keep us safe. So I appreciate that. And then did also just want to thank you guys for coming out to Neighborhood Night Out. We had, I think, 15 members of law enforcement show up throughout the course of the night. So appreciate you being there, and the sheriff came by, and Sergeant Cherry was there, as well as several other people. So appreciate all the work you guys are doing for the community.
Great. Thank you for hosting.
I just want to give a kudos. I'm very grateful to Sergeant Sherry. He made a commitment to placing the traffic beacon up at that intersection, and was happy to see that you guys were being reported on Facebook for sitting at said intersection. I know that sounds strange, but a lot of the community jumped on that post to make sure that when they sit at these meetings, they are aware that there was a specific reason that you guys were there doing exactly what you were doing. And that was to increase the awareness, which Sergeant Sherry committed himself to, and he followed through beautifully. I'm just grateful. I know the 4th of July is always a scary time, especially in regards to some fears that were brought up, things that were discussed looking into for barricades at the end of the parades and stuff like that. So encouraged to see that you guys did come out in full force. I'm very grateful. And you stepped up and did items that you didn't have to do, but you did them anyways.
Thank you.
Yes, William.
Just appreciate what you do. I know at times it probably doesn't feel like you get that much appreciation out there, but the citizens, the way you're keeping this town safe, we really appreciate that. And I know it's a never ending process out there. We got a lot of crazies, but it's a great town too. So good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work and for the report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
On for water and wastewater monthly report.
This is Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works. This is really just a staff report for you guys to submit both on treatment capacity and operations for the water and wastewater facilities, and then also an update to include for our very exciting construction projects that are both swinging and well underway, with large cranes and lots of piles of dirt, a whole lot of concrete. So I do have two staff members with me that could probably answer if you have more technical questions related to anything. But mainly we want to make sure that if we've answered the kind of questions that you'd be looking for in these kind of reports, and then that we're here to clarify anything.
Trustee Mason?
I don't think I've got anything.
Trustee King?
Thank you very much.
Trustee Gator?
So just had a quick question on the two charts for the water treatment. The first one, is that the combined total production? I know it says conventional micro and nano and RO, and then the one below is just the main, not including the others. Is that, am I okay. I just want to make sure I was reading it correctly. Thank you.
No, I know this is something that I had kind of discussed and possibly asked for. I am extremely grateful for it. You answered a lot of the questions that I had been asking on a regular basis involving water. I like to see that this is available to our residents as well. Thank you.
Doing a great job, and this is way beyond my pay grade, so I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for the hard work and for the report.
Thank you. Colorado Open Records Act.
I just needed Crystal to finish it before she left. So that way I don't have to worry about it for some time. So we won't see another one of those for another quarter.
Okay.
If you have any questions, let me know. Feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect.
Thank
I
you.
guess email
Yeah, email me.
any questions. Okay, are there any reports from the board, starting with Trustee Wiegand?
None at the present. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Mayor Pro Tem? Trustee Mason? Trustee Kenny?
I have some important dates for everyone to put on their calendars. The first ones are related, well, the ones I guess I'm talking about are related to our new school. This Thursday, August 11th, there will be an open house at our brand new Wellington Middle High School. And that will occur from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the new school. So August 11th, Thursday, 2 days from now, 5:30 to 7:30. If you are not able to attend that and you want to go, Saturday would be the option from 9 to 11. So that is August 13th, 9 through to 11. And this is an open house for entire community. So you don't have to have a student present to attend. But I definitely recommend you guys go out there and see this amazing facility that we have available to our community. It is going to change Wellington as we know it. It's wonderful. So I hope that you guys will attend and show your support. The other date that's very important for you to put on your schedule is August 26th. August 26th will be the first home game for Wellington. It would be really, really important and amazing if you guys could support. And again, no needed student to attend. You don't have to have a footballer to come. And the district's actually bringing in extra bleachers because they are expecting an enormous turnout. I would hate to let them down. So August 26th. I don't have the time right now, but I'm sure you'll hear about it again. But for now, reserve that time in your calendar right now. The other update I have is regarding, I was appointed on the Wellington Main Street Exploratory Committee. We met and had our first session. I want you to know and feel confident that the people that have been chosen to serve on this committee are amazing. Incredible expertise from Matt Ashby, the passion and knowledge and historical information from Anita, Ms. Holding, who is just all around all-star. We got some really fantastic people in the room to make some really great recommendations. But to be honest, we have a lot more questions than answers from this first session. So I'm going to go over high level just so you have a brief idea of what's going on and things that we're following up with. The first thing is we need to do a thorough review of and understand all the current MOUs between the town and DOLA, between DOLA and the Main Street program, between other agreements, whether it's between Main Street and Chamber, the town and Main Street. How do all of these relationships work currently? And what are the legal obligations within those agreements, specifically with DOLA, because those are really outside of our control. We need to understand how that works. I'd hate for us to bring a recommendation and not know the entire picture. The goal of this group too is based on the recommendations they would have finalized and thought through all the required components to bring that to the board. So if new MOUs or amended MOUs would be required, that those would be drafted and available for review as they would be for the recommendation that's put before you. Similar with that, we need to understand a lot of the bylaws associated with Main Street programs. That are this Main Street program, we're reviewing the current board member agreement and handbook. We're also going to be reviewing the volunteer agreement and the mission and vision from their strategic plan in 2018. A lot of the items that came out of this is really logistics and how things actually work for a nonprofit board versus a board within the town. What's the relationship? How does that work? What are the legalities? Who are the liabilities? And so we talked about a lot of those items, but overall, the main goal and conversation around this is how do we define success? What is the purpose and function? How do we prove that success? And what are the expectations? So there was a very thorough conversation again that has a million more questions now that we are running down. People are putting significant time and effort into this. So I want you guys to know that I think you put everything into great hands, and we are seeking a solution and recommendation that will come fully formed to this board based on what we find out. So we're going to be meeting several times in order to make a recommendation. Our hope is by the October meeting. So that is what we have been up to. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gator.
Yep, so I had a couple of different things that I did want to highlight. So first, our finance committee had their first, I would guess you would call it real in the numbers meeting yesterday. So they kind of went through some of the department budgets and again, we picked a great group of people for that. They were asking fantastic questions, bringing up some ideas and thoughts, and they're working through how are we going to get our recommendations to the boards and the board of trustees, and they're getting all that together. They caught some items as they're going through. The staff was like, oh, we thought we'd change this, but it hadn't gotten on there. So staff was able to that's right, we were already planning to change it. So that was good. And then also brought up a lot of questions, and it's good because staff is going to be able to go and look at those things, and then they'll be able to figure it out before they come to us, so that hopefully we are actually going to get a cleaner, better product, because the finance committee went through it already and gave some thoughts on it, and they got through, I think 11 out of the 7. I don't remember. They got through a lot. So they're doing an awesome job. One other item I did want to just bring forward to you guys was an idea that they had. I do want to clarify this was their idea, and I bring it to you as the trustee liaison to the board. One of the things that had come up, and they were talking about the election, because in there was a budget for special election. They were talking about the idea of what if we just changed it to have all the town's elections happen in process of a coordinated election with the county instead of doing our own thing in April, and why don't we just make a rule to have it always with the county? There's a lot entailed with that. I know I have different opinions personally on that, but that was something the finance committee felt would be beneficial for this board to look into. What would that entail? Does that make sense? Could it save the town money? So if that's something this board says, hey, we should have staff look into that, we can do that. If we don't, it's up to the board to decide on that. But I wanted to make sure I did my job of bringing that to you guys, because that was a recommendation from the finance committee, is something for us to consider. And then I also did want to, losing my notes here. There were 3 things that I wanted to talk about, and I'm forgetting what the second one was. So I will come back to it if I remember it later. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was we had a lot of comments and concerns from residents brought forward today in public comment. I know there was a lot on social media. I know Miss Garcia sent over to us kind of what the library has operated under up till now. One of the things that she mentioned, I think that is a concern, is that we don't really have a set these are the rules or policies. So regardless of what this board decides to do one way or the other, I think that at the very minimum, because we do serve as the library board, it would be prudent of us to actually schedule a meeting and figure out what our policy is going to be. Whether they are in agreement with what the residents, there was a lot of things for me personally that were brought up that were very concerning, but again, I'm one voice on this, but I think at the very least, we need to set out very clearly for our town and our library, what are those rules and policies? And that's our job as a library board. So I don't know what the process for scheduling that meeting is, but I think it's something that should be done so that it's clear and defined, and whatever that is, it's not something that's going to be coming back on staff. It will be coming back to us as a board, library board in that case. But so that was my thought on that. And I don't remember what the other item was. So, oh, neighborhood night out. That's what it was. So we did have our
National night.
National night out. Sorry, thank you. National night out was awesome. We had I think 30 people. We had about 15 members from law enforcement, and then a couple people from the fire district showed up, and then several citizens came from all over town. We had some barbecue and ribs, and a huge thank you to Les Barbecue. They gave us some pulled pork for it, which people loved, and a lot of people brought sides. So that was huge. It was just great to see the citizens there talking with members of law enforcement. Our sheriff came by, our county commissioner Kafalis came by as well at the end. And so it really was just great to see people of different ideas and different backgrounds having great discussion and just all being members of the community. And so I know, talking to Sergeant Cherry, his hope is that next year we don't just have one, we have several. This could be his idea is this could be the first of many, and he could have his people going all over town to different neighborhoods. So would encourage, if anyone is interested in that, I'm happy to share with you some of the resources I found. Sergeant Cherry, I'm sure, would be thrilled to talk to other people about how they can do that. And then one thing that actually came out of that was I had a discussion, because I know fresh on my mind was the conversations we've had about the SRO in the schools. And Poudre School District has really pushed back and has said, we don't think it's the thing to do. The sheriff's office kind of said, we don't know it's needed right now. And so was just trying to come up with what are different things that we could do. And one of the things that came up as something that is done in Berthoud is they have what they call a community impact deputy. And what that person does is from what I understand, they don't take calls unless it's emergent. So if there's a crisis, then they respond to those, but they're assigned to projects. So that could be, if there's issues with cars being broken into, they focus on that. If they're going to schools, they could focus on that. And so that was something that I had thought of as maybe that's something that we could explore, since the school district is saying we don't want to have an SRO. Could we look at something like that, like they do in Berthoud with that community impact deputy, where we have someone and have them here during the week? And so if we say in the beginning, we really feel that project they need to be working on is spending more time going around the schools, checking in and making sure on those other schools when Deputy Remington isn't there, then it would give us that ability to have that extra resource up here. So I don't know if that's something this board is willing to look into, but it was something that could be a possible, at least short-term solution to some of the concerns that have been brought up in regards to that. So I wanted to share that because I had learned about that in some of my conversations I had with both Sergeant Cherry and Lieutenant Badberg. So, and I think more information will be getting sent in that we can look into and decide what we want to do.
What members of the board were able to come to the National Night Out at your house?
So I was there, Trustee Teets came by for a little bit, and then Trustee Wiegand was also able to swing by.
Yeah, all good stuff, John. Great. Yeah, I think we can definitely look into some of those items moving forward. Trustee Teets.
I do have a few things, but one of my main things is to tout on Megan and the Public Works and Bob Gowing. So we had a resident reach out to me. She was struggling with some ADA curbing in her neighborhood where there's a midway that curbing. So handicap access typically happens on curbs, and there's often a midway where the block is long. And this resident has a disabled son who operates by blowing in a straw into his wheelchair, and her access was constantly blocked. The handicap access is not identified at all. But through that, she has a shiny new red, fluorescent red curbing identified around that access with a sign that specifically states ADA parking. So, and I have reached back out to her. She says she's not had anyone parking in that spot ever since. So, but it was becoming a major issue with her son even being able to access their home. So thought that was kind of neat, and also opens the door that if anybody else is experiencing handicapped areas that are regularly being blocked off, that it might be something that we can look into to help with access to sidewalks around town. But, oh, and also they actually were kind of superstars the last 2 weeks with messages from me. They addressed the large irrigation issue that was happening over in, what area was that? Yeah, so a resident had reached out and detected a large irrigation leak and they hopped on it immediately. That's one thing I will say, anytime in the last month that I have reached out to them, within an hour to an hour and a half, the person who reached out to me said that they had directly contacted them. So, I mean, so much as Bob showing up at this resident's house to evaluate it. So I'm very impressed and happy to see that kind of stuff happening. Other than that, I think I had sent some emails out requesting residents reach out for the legal use of side-by-sides and golf carts here in Wellington. Legal use means license plates, kind of like what you see in South Dakota and Utah, except for the usage on Cleveland, since that's a state highway. If that's something that the board is interested in addressing, I think it would create a unique opportunity here in Wellington. There's, I think, 3 other areas in all of Colorado that allow that usage. There would be some exceptions like the noise ordinance and stuff like that. But I think it would be kind of a cool idea to cruise around on a golf cart or a side by side, especially during the parade times. I'm sorry to Sergeant Sherry if he's now officially freaking out about the addition of that. But that's something that I think I've had probably a total of 12 resident reach outs, and I have had success with resolving almost every single one. I'm happy to report that the resident I was concerned about is safe and sound in Iowa, and her home, from what I understand, is getting ready to be listed. So she will be retiring with that income in Iowa. Yes, so that's all I have right now. The CAC, of course, will be coming to you guys. An email was sent out seeking feedback if there's anything specific you guys are looking for as far as the board goes.
Thank you. Nothing.
As far as the request from trustee Gator to look up the election information, that is something that's easy for us to pull together. It would not be time consuming. So with the board's direction, I'm happy to get that taken care of. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're gonna be moving into an executive session. Moving on to executive session night, can I get a motion to go in, or actually, can we take a recess for?
Might I recommend that you take the motion to go into executive session, take a recess after, because everybody has to leave anyway, so.
All right. Executive session tonight, may I get a motion to move into executive session?
I move that we move into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators pursuant to section 24-6-4024 CRS regarding negotiations with North Pooter Irrigation Company as required by CRS 24-6-4022 D5, 2A, and 2E. The executive session proceedings will be electronically recorded and the record will be preserved for 90 days through November 7th, 2022.
I'll second.
May I get a roll call?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Kenny,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
No.
Mayor Shosse. Mayor Shosse.
Can we get a 5-minute recess, Mayor?
Yes, 5-minute recess.